Fugue is going to break your enemy's hospital builds. And today, I will show you how to build her best. In this guide, I will go over Fugue's best relic, light cone and team options and explain her kit in detail later in this guide. Check the timestamps down below. My name is Neostar Impact, let's get into it. Among 4 pieces, the Iron Cavalry is her #1 choice. Best set to emphasize her own damage, especially since you need to build 150 break effect on top anyway to make sure you can use her kit in full. Shooting Meteor is the next best bet if for some reason you have slept during the whole break season and just came back to the game. And if you don't have that too, go double break effect or take the 1-2 punch combo of break effect and speed. The usual popular stuff like 4-piece Watchmaker doesn't work since her ult ain't buffing your team and her skill is too slow for Sarkados, in case you plan to use her with your Acheron. So yeah, just go Iron Cavalry. In terms of ornaments, go either Kalpani, Talia, or if you really want to give enemies zero chance to cut the line and have Fugue pull up in battle ASAP, use Thundah. But note that she already has 40% advance forward in her technique and is naturally a very speedy fox lady, so 9.5 out of 10 times it is going to be Kalpani or Talia. As for main substats, get EHR for her body to make sure her defense threat sticks the landing. But if you already have a lot in the substats, you can consider HP or defense instead to beef her up for your no sustain, zero cycle adventures. For boots, get speed hands down, HP or defense for her bolts and a break effect rope. Substat prio is break effect until you see 220 or more in combat, speed and then some EHR in case you decided against an EHR body. You need 220 break effect in combat to unlock the full strength of her A6 buff. Her stats and Iron Cavalry 2-piece effect already give you the first 70, but the remaining 150 you will need to scratch from somewhere like relic stats, team buffs and or her light cone, but more is always welcome. And with speed, sure, the bare minimum is 134, but the new Fuxian Beauty is actually physically incapable to run that slow. Given that you don't leave her at level 1, she will come out of the factory at 141 speed with nothing on but her speedy high heels. Not even a week in and you have already peeps flexing their 200 plus king-sized mommies on Twitter. 200 plus speed out of freaking combat. Pretty sure Fugue is giving Fei Xiao a run for her money. Alright, light cones. We have here choices. I mean, Fugue seeked out Harmony but gave her best Acheron impression instead, fumbling away on the wrong path. Now, stuck with Nihility, you won't see her do any duties either. Outside of weakness breaks, of course. No Harmony LCs is quite an interesting balancing choice. With that being said, her signature is unsurprisingly the best for her bread and butter break teams. Massive break effect and a 100% chance to make enemies take more break damage. But if you want to pump your Acheron numbers, you will be a lot happier to put that resolution light cone on Fugue. Now, Fugue's basics can put in some actual work by making stacks for Acheron, and surely the defense threat is appreciated by everybody, including the break guys, which makes it the most versatile slap on and forget LC for her, and it performs close enough in breaks that you can just get by fine without her signature. Hands down the best bang for buck option. But if bang for buck ain't cheap enough for you, you can still go with solitary healing. At least it gives a nice chunk of break effect. But the energy provision is whack to say the least. Remember, she ain't about DOTs, she doesn't apply those with her talent, so you got only breaks. Now you might feel fancy and think, oh yeah, let's take her ult into pure fiction and one-shot waves for huge tax refunds. Only to quickly notice that one-shotting often prevents a DOT from being applied in the first place. Sorry, but no free lunch for you today. And in MOC or Apocalyptic Shadow, with mostly chunky bosses, well, bad news, the guys have to die for that refund. Then there's the tutorial LC. Usable, but it's frankly quite meh for her. Sure, the ER provision works without issues, but you will just feel nothing but sadness and existential dread using it. So resolution or signature is where it's at, hands down. Tingyun 2.0 slides into a very interesting niche that pretty much makes her the Robin of break effect teams, raising their ceiling greatly and making them more competitive going into 3.0. She helps your carries to fulfill their goals like stacking talents, etc., and enables them to deal with content even if the type doesn't match. Her mere presence is enough to give your teams more chances to break enemies, shred defenses, and to delay the action. Now it's time for teams. Fugue completes an unholy trio of break. Now you got the good, the baddie, and the fugely, fugly, whatever. Alright, I had myself out after the guide. So sure, it might look like you have to make a choice between HMC, Rame, and now Fugue, if you plan to have a sustain as well. But the best defense, like always, is a good offense, and these guys combined make it so that the enemy never gets to play the game, and at the same time, you are always 2 steps ahead of them, with the help of the DDD or Dance Dance Dance, especially if you put it on the HMC. Surely, the unholy trio is a one heck of a fun core with that, but of course it's not always possible, especially once 3.0 hits and the MCs get a new job. So most of you will be left with Fugue plus Mei if you intend to play both Break and Remembrance teams into the future. But regardless, the big 3 break DPS in the game, being Rapper, Boothill and Firefly, all get huge gains from Fugue, helping them to stack their talents faster with more frequent breaks. And in the case of Firefly, help her make more use of the big toughness damage multiplier that Fire got. Physical got the same multiplier, so also a huge dub for Boothill. It is funny to know that actually none of them appreciates the toughness damage utility that Fugue provides. But that doesn't stop her at all from raising the ceiling for break teams. And aside of the big 3, other breakers like Linksha, the HMC and Xui now always get to do at least half of the toughness damage they normally do into other weakness types. Linksha is now absolutely insane, turning from a healer into the "alright, I'm doing it myself" meme. The HMC with their massive toughness damage can use Fugue skill to prep chunky enemies for the big PP breaks from your carries. And then we got Acheron, who finally gets the long missing second 5-star Nihility for her teams, enhancing her ceiling at E0 S1 levels, helping her out in every single game mode. But the most bang you will witness in pure fiction, where you can have guys like Aventurine or Linksha generate boatloads of stacks for her. And with that, let's talk traces. On Tingyun 2.0, you're free to skip leveling her basics and her ultimate for the simple reason that her breaks and super breaks do not benefit from her trace attack multipliers. So just level skill and talent and then literally anything else before you touch her ult and basics. Noteworthy about the basics though is that they can be empowered by the skill, which I will get back into in a second. And the ultimate is a plain AoE nuke that is strong enough to knock out toughness bars from smaller fries, which ends up one-shotting entire waves minus the boss in pure fiction. The interesting part here is that it ignores weakness types of enemies. So correctly timed, you can use it to avoid taking hits, when you run a sustainless team. Or prep a boss so your carry can go for that big weakness break knockout. The downside of this ability is that you trade 130 energy to get 0 utility in return. Ron May's ultimate costs the same, by the way. But hey, at least Fuge's one is pretty to look at. Let's talk now the meat of her kit, her skill and talent. The skill has a similar 3-turn mechanic like the Imposter Tingyun, but on all Tingyun it ticked down on her carry's turns. Pepperidge Farm remembers, and so do former Seele mains. The new Tingyun counts though on her own turns. The skill makes her enter the Torrid state, and the buff it gives to the chosen one is called Foxian Prayer. Whoever gets it can now look forward to some very cheeky benefits. First, they get a chunky 30% break effect. Second, do now toughness damage regardless of weakness type, but at half of the regular efficiency if it is not their own type. And third, enemies they hit have now a base chance of 100% to get the defense reduced by 18%, which lasts for 2 turns. Alright, let's note a few things here. The toughness damage utility that Fuge provides doesn't stack with any other effect. So, Acheron's ultimate, Rappa, Boothill and Firefly all do not benefit from this effect as they bring their own utility to deal with mismatching weakness types. Acheron's ult just flat out ignores them, and Boothill and Firefly can implant their own type on enemies, which makes Silverwolf sad. Another important detail is that while your Fuge enables your carry with her skill, it is ultimately the action of your chosen carry that applies that defense debuff. So if your Fuge is an Amazon warehouse, then Rappa is a delivery girl. And to honor UPS policies, she will AoE slingshot the death threat packages onto enemy porches, leaving nothing but complaints about damages. But aside of application range, you also need to consider other things. Is there more than one guy dishing out damage? Who struggles the most doing toughness damage? Can you stack important talents or passives faster by choosing someone else? Should I switch the buff to another guy at some time? Yada 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 yada. There are a lot of examples how you can use Fuge skill effectively, which vary from team to team. Now to the talent. That one is a different story as its effects are only depending on Fuge's presence and actions. It has 2 very important effects. It creates a so-called exo toughness bar on every enemy. It converts also your team's toughness damage into instances of super break damage once enemies are knocked out. With that extra toughness bar, rest assured enemies won't get any more tanky. They regularly pass out the moment you knock out their regular toughness bar, which always gets depleted first before touching said exo bar. You also will still do your regular break damage and your usual super breaks. Now comes a new thing. With the first bar being down, you will now start doing toughness damage to the second bar. That bar has only 40% of the strength from the first one, so you will knock that one down a lot faster. And the reward you get for doing so is that you do a second weakness break damage instance. This greatly benefits your big PP breakers, especially the current top dogs Rappa, Boothill and Firefly. I have one more thing to note here before I move on. While that second bar is a lot easier to break, you can still run into issues. Sure, trash mobs get obliterated like right away, but with bosses and elites, you blink and boom, they recovered. Fuge slows them down by 15%, which ain't gonna stop Svarog from rebooting. So without Ruan Mei helping to keep guys on the floor, you might not get the chance to break the second bar. The technique allows you to turn on the Chrome Incognito mode, giving you the illusion of privacy while watching smut, and on top, making enemies pretend they haven't seen your 10 seconds of degeneracy. And once you enter battle, Fuge gets a chunky 40% action advance, which makes sure she gets to buff the carry before they have their turn. It's neat. You have a 100% base chance to apply the defense threat of her skill for 2 of her turns. So, definitely a must use before combat. Now let's talk about the major traces. The A2 puts a 15% delay on enemies once the chosen one, by her skill, does a weakness break to them. The A4 gives a 30% break effect to Fugue, which is nice, especially for her A6. On top, she will also recover 1 skill point when using her skill the first time. I guess we will take that. The A6 buffs everyone minus Fugue herself by a 6% break effect, stacking twice to 12%. However, if at that time of the break Fugue has more than 220% break effect, it will be a lot more, 18% per stack and 36% in total. Big deal if you consider that often more than one dude deals serious damage in the team. But 220% or actually 150 considering minor traces A4 and Relic passive is quite a chunk, which makes it hard to even think of an ER rope, especially without her signature. The minor traces add up to 24% break effect, 14 speed and 10% HP. The speed is nice, making her come out of the factory at 116 speeds without boots and 141 with. So 200 plus speed is more than doable and already done by quite a few people. It's kinda low-key hailing the advent of Remembrance with speed monsters like Agalea. Now E1 versus S1. In the like cone section, I showed that Fugue signature is only geared towards break teams, and that resolution is the better choice if you want to support non-break teams as well. If we look now at her E1, the thing is pretty much a no-brainer. 50% weakness break efficiency is massive for any team. More toughness damage and bigger super break numbers is always fantastic. So even if you care only about break teams, you should still secure the juicy E1 before you pick up her signature. Alright, let's cover briefly the rest of her Eidolons. The E2 gives Fugue a 3 energy refund when enemies get weakness broken, which happens twice if you break the exobars as well. Once you use Fugue ultimate, your whole team's action gets advanced by 24%, which is dance great. Oh, the nihility. I see you guys. Sure, in MOC it will still take a long while to refund the burst, but 6 energy per enemy in pure fiction will be nuts, making it way harder for trash mobs to ever land a single hit on sustainless teams. The E3 adds levels to her skill and basics, not like crazy. E4 increases break damage dealt by 20%, decent buff, but not super huge for the cost. E5 gives levels to talent and ultimate. Same like E3, you have a trash upgrade and a decent one, making this upgrade feel meh. Alright, E6. That one is interesting. Now everyone gets to enjoy her E1 buff, which is great, but the toughness damage utility from a skill still won't be that usable for most top break carries, and so you would choose someone else anyway at E0. But while this can be harmful for the team, it will be actually the most useful on Fugue herself. The combined effects with that 100% weakness break efficiency from her E1 and E6, plus her own toughness break utility, and boom, her struggles are gone. At E6, every single point you miss at E0 for Fugue is addressed. The lack of utility in her ultimate that can't be fixed through light cones or relics, the high energy cost, and most importantly her basics, which are barely any help to deal toughness damage, all of that just got fixed. But you know what? At the end of the day, we still got a very serviceable unit at base level. I mean, she is not any less than S tier in every single game mode, yeah? And whales on this place will be glad to know that nothing is going to be left desired if you go like all the way. So yeah, the real treasure is maybe the balance we got along the way. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Peace.